love, peace, happiness, all noble goals not easily attained, for there was always a price to pay. The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas by Ursula K. Le Guin. Read by Karl. With a clamor of bells that set the swallows soaring, the festival of summer came to the city Omelas, bright towered by the sea. The ring of the boats in harbour sparkled with flags. In the streets between houses with red roofs and painted walls, between old moss-grown gardens and under avenues of trees, past great parks and public buildings, processions moved. Some were decorous, old people in long stiff robes of mauve and grey, grave master workmen, quiet, merry women carrying their babies and chatting as they walked. In other streets the music beat faster, shimmering of gong and tambourine, and the people went dancing. The procession was a dance. Children dodged in and out, their high calls rising like the swallows crossing flights over the music and the singing. All the processions rode towards the north side of the city, where on the great water meadow called the Green Fields, boys and girls, naked in the bright air, with mud-stained feet and ankles and long lithe arms exercised their restive horses before the race. The horses wore no gear at all, but a halter without bit. Their manes were braided with streamers of silver, gold, and green. They flared their nostrils and pranced and boasted to one another. They were vastly excited. The horse being the only animal who had adopted our ceremonies as his own. Far off to the north and west, the mountain stood up half encircling Omelas on her bay. The air of morning was so clear that the snow still crowning the 18 peaks burned with white gold fire across the miles of sunlit air under the dark blue of the sky. There was just enough wind to make the banners that marked the right course slap and flutter now and then. In the silence of the broad green meadows, one could hear the music winding through the city streets, farther and nearer and ever approaching, a gentle faint sweetness of the air. From time to time trembled and gathered together and broke out in the great joyous clanging of the bells. Joyous. How was one to tell about joy? How describe the citizens of Omelas? They were not simple folk, you see, though they were happy. But we didn't say the words of cheer much any more. All smiles have become archaic. Given a description such as this, one tends to make certain assumptions. Given a description such as this, one tends to look next for the king, mounted on a splendid stallion and surrounded by his noble knights, or perhaps on a golden litter borne by great muscled slaves. But there was no king. They did not use swords or keep slaves. They were not barbarians. I do not know the rules and laws of their society, but I suspect they were singularly few. As they did without monarchy and slavery, so they also got on without the stock exchange, the advertisement, the secret police, and the bomb. Yet I repeat, these were not simple folk, not dulcet shepherds, noble savages, bland utopians. They were not less complex than us. Trouble is, we have a bad habit, encouraged by pedants and sophisticates, of considering happiness as something rather stupid. Only pain is intellectual, only evil interesting. That is the treason of the artist, refusal to accept the banality of evil and the terrible burden of pain. If you can't lick them, join them. If it hurts, repeat it. But to praise despair is to condemn delight. To embrace violence is to lose hold of everything else. We've almost lost hold. We can no longer describe happy men, nor make any celebration of joy. How can I tell you about the people of Omelas? These were not naive, unhappy children, though the children were in fact happy. They were mature, intelligent, passionate adults whose lives were not wretched. Oh, miracle. But I wish I could describe it better. I wish I could convince you. Omelas sounds in my world like a city in a fairy tale, only going far away once upon a time. Perhaps it would be best if you imagine it as your own fancy bids, assuming it will rise to the occasion, for I certainly cannot suit you all. For instance, how about technology? I think there would be no cars or helicopters in and above the streets. This follows from the fact that people of Omelas are happy people. Happiness is based on a just discrimination of what is necessary, what is neither necessary nor destructive, and what is destructive. In the middle category, however, that is the unnecessary but undestructive, that of comfort, luxury, exuberance, etc., they could perfectly well have central heating, subway trains, washing machines, and all kinds of marvelous devices not yet invented here. Flying light sources, fuelless power, a cure for the common cold. Or they could have none of that. It doesn't matter. As you like it. I'm inclined to think that people from towns up and down the coast have been coming to Omelas during the last days before the festival on very fast little trains and double-decked trams. And the train station of Omelas is actually the handsomest building in town, though plainer than the magnificent farmer's market. But even granted trains, I find that Omelas so far strikes some of you as goody-goody. Smiles, bells, parades, horses, blech. If so, please add an orgy. If an orgy would help, don't hesitate. Let us not, however, have temples from which issue beautiful nude priests and priestesses already half in ecstasy and ready to copulate with any man or woman, lover or stranger, who desires union with the deep godhead of the blood, although that was my first idea. Really, it would be better not to have any temples in Omelas, at least not man's temples. Religion, yes. Clergy, no. Surely the most beautiful news can just wander about, offering themselves like divine soufflés to the hunger of the needy and the rapture of the flesh. Let them join the processions. Let tambourines be struck above the copulations, and the glory of desire be proclaimed upon the gongs. And a not unimportant point, let the offspring of these delighted rituals be beloved and looked after by all. One thing I know is there is none of in Omelas is guilt. Well, what else should there be? I thought at first there were no drugs, but that is puritanical. For those who like it, the faint, insistent sweetness of Druze may perfume the ways of the city. Druze was first brings a great lightness and brilliance to the mind and limbs. Then after some hours, a dreamy languor, and wonderful visions at last of the very arcane and innermost secrets of the universe, as well as exciting the pleasure of sex beyond all belief. And it is not habit-forming. For more modest tastes, I think there ought to be beer. What else? What else belongs in a joyous city? The sense of victory, certainly, the celebration of courage. But as we did without clergy, let us do without soldiers. The joy built upon successful slaughter is not the right kind of joy. It will not do. It is fearful and it is trivial. A boundless and generous contentment. A magnanimous triumph felt not against some outer enemy, but in communion with the finest and fairest in the souls of all men everywhere, and the splendor of the world's summer. This is what swells the hearts of the people of Omelas, and the victory is celebrated as that of life. I don't think many of them need to take Druze. Most of the processions have reached the green fields by now. A marvelous smell of cooking goes forth from the red and blue tents of the provisioners. The faces of small children are amiably sticky. In a benign grey beard of a man, a couple of crumbs of rich pastry are entangled. The youths and girls that mount their horses are beginning to group around the starting line of the course. An old woman, small, fat, and laughing, is passing out flowers from a basket, and tall young men wear her flowers in their shining hair. A child of 9 or 10 sits at the edge of the crowd alone, playing on a wooden flute. People pause to listen, and they smile. But they do not speak to him, for he never ceases playing and never sees them, his dark eyes wholly wrapped in this sweet thing, magic of the tune. He finishes, slowly lowers his hands holding the wooden flute. As if that little private silence for the signal, all at once a trumpet sounds from the pavilion in the starting line. Imperious, melancholy, piercing. The horses rear on their slender legs, and some of them neigh in answer. Sober-faced, the young rider stroked the horse's neck and soothed them, whispering, "Quiet, quiet, there, my beauty, my hope." They begin to form in rank along the starting line. The crowds along the racecourse are like a field of grass and flowers in the wind. The festival of summer has begun. Do you believe? Do you accept the festival, the city, the joy? No? Then let me describe one more thing. In a basement on one of the beautiful public buildings of Omelas, or perhaps in the cellar of one of its spacious private homes, there is a room. It has one locked door and no window. A little light seeps in dustily between cracks in the boards, second-hand from a cobweb window somewhere across the cellar. In one corner of the little room, a couple of mops, with stiff, clotted, foul-smelling heads, stand near a rusty bucket. Floor is dirt, a little damp to the touch, as cellar dirt usually is. The room is about 3 paces long and 2 wide. A mere broom closet or disused tool room. In the room, a child is sitting. It could be a boy or a girl. Looks about 6, but actually is near 10. It is feeble-minded. Perhaps it was born defective. Or perhaps it's become imbecile through fear and malnutrition and neglect. It picks its nose and occasionally fumbles vaguely with its toes or genitals as it sits hunched in the corner farthest from the bucket and the 2 mops. It is afraid of the mops. It finds them horrible. It shuts its eyes, but it knows the mops are still standing there, and the door is locked, and nobody will come. The door is always locked. No one ever comes. Sometimes, the child has no understanding of time or interval. Sometimes the door rattles terribly and opens up, and a person or several people are there. One of them may come in and kick the child to make it stand up. The others never come close, but peer at it with frightened, disgusted eyes. The food bowl and the water jug are hastily filled. The door is locked. The eyes disappear. The people at the door never say anything, but the child, who has not always lived in the tool room, can remember sunlight and its mother's voice sometimes speaks. "I will be good," it says. "Please let me out. I will be good." They never answer. The child used to scream for help at night and cry a good deal, but now it only makes a kind of whining, and it speaks less and less often. It is so thin there are no calves to its legs. Its belly protrudes. It lives in a half bowl of cornmeal and grease a day. They all know it is there, all the people of Omulus. Some of them have come to see it. Others are content merely to know it is there. They all know that it has to be there. Some don't understand why, and some do not. But they all understand that their happiness, the beauty of their city, the tenderness of their friendships, the health of their children, the wisdom of the scholars, the skill of their makers, even the abundance of their harvest and the kindly windows of the sky, depend wholly on this child's abominable misery. These usually explain to children when they are between 8 and 12, whatever they seem capable of understanding, and most of them have come to see the child are young people, though often enough an adult comes, or comes back, to see the child. No matter how well the matter has been explained to them, these young spectators are always shocked and sickened at the sight. They feel disgust, which they have thought themselves superior to. They feel anger, outrage, impotence, despite all the explanations. They would like to do something for the child, but there's nothing they can do. If the child were brought up in the sunlight out of that vile place, if it were cleaned and fed and comforted, that would be a good thing indeed. But if it were done, in that day and hour, all the prosperity, beauty, and delight of Omulus would wither and be destroyed. Those are the terms. To exchange all the goodness and grace for every life in Omulus for that single small improvement. To throw away the happiness of thousands for the chance of happiness of one. That would be to let guilt within the walls indeed. The terms are strict and absolute. There may not even be a kind word spoken to the child. Often young people go home in tears or in a tearless rage when they have seen the child and face this terrible paradox. They may brood over it for weeks or years. But as time goes on, they begin to realize that even if the child could be released, it would not get much good of its freedom. A little vague pleasure of warmth and food, no real doubt, but a little more. It is too degraded and imbecile to know any real joy. It has been afraid too long ever to be free of fear. Its habits are too uncouth for it to respond to humane treatment. Indeed, after so long, it will probably be wretched without walls about to protect it, and darkness for its eyes. Their tears at the bitter injustice dry when they begin to perceive the terrible reality of justice and to accept it. Yet it is their tears and anger, the triangle of generosity and acceptance of their helplessness, which are perhaps the true source of the splendor of their lives. Theirs is no vapid, irresponsible happiness. They know that they, like the child, are not free. They know compassion. It is the existence of the child, and their knowledge of its existence, that makes possible the nobility of their architecture, the poignancy of their music, the profundity of their science. It is because of the child they are so gentle with children. They know that if the wretched one were not there sniveling in the dark, the other one, the flute player, could make no joyful music, as the young riders line up in their beauty for the race on the sunlight of the first morning of summer. Now do you believe them? Are they not more credible? But there is one more thing to tell, and this is quite incredible. At times, one of the adolescent boys or girls who go see the child do not go home to weep or rage. In fact, do not go home at all. Sometimes also a man or a woman much older falls silent for a day or two, then leaves home. These people go out into the street and walk down the street alone. They keep walking, and walk straight out of the city of Omelas through the beautiful gates. They keep walking across the farmlands. Each one goes alone, youth or girl, man or woman. Night falls. The traveler must pass down village streets, between the houses with yellow lit windows, and on into the darkness of the fields. Each alone they go west or north, towards the mountains. They go on. They leave Omelas, they walk ahead in the darkness and do not come back. The place they go towards is a place even less unimaginable to most of us than the city of happiness. I cannot describe it at all. It's possible it does not exist. But they seem to know where they are going, the ones who walk away from Omelas. The end.